Welcome to this presentation about the new federal scholarship tax credit, God's new gold mine, and how it can help you help more kids find the narrow way. Brought to you by My Church SGO. Please visit mychurchsgo.org for more details. In the big beautiful bill passed into law in July of 2025, a new tax provision was included. This tax provision allows taxpayers who pay in at least $1,700 in federal income taxes to claim a tax credit, which effectively reduces their tax liability to the federal government. The tax credit works basically by allowing the taxpayer to choose. They can either take this $1,700 and pay it to the government, or take the $1,700 that they would have paid in taxes and donate it to a K-12 scholarship granting organization. So let's take a little more detailed look at how this SGO scholarship donor system actually works. The first step is donors donate to the SGO. SGOs then give scholarships to eligible students, and the SGO gets to keep 10% of the money they receive from donors for administration. This is where My Church SGO's fee comes from. The next step is students use tuition or use their money that they receive in scholarships for eligible expenses such as tuition, books, technology, and transportation. And lastly, the donor is reimbursed from their federal income tax liability being reduced by the amount that they donate to the SGO. Now, notice these little church things all around. These are all the areas that My Church SGO can help you in setting up this donor SGO scholarship system. We have donor portals for donors, portals for SGOs, portals for students, and portals for churches. That way we can facilitate the entire ecosystem, which we believe will be extremely helpful in making this all work. So now that we know a little bit more about how the federal scholarship tax credit for K-12 students work, let's do an example so we can see just how powerful this new program can be. First off, let's take a 600 family church, and then we'll estimate the number of taxpayers per family. For this, we're going to use 1.2. That's hopefully a good estimate for the number of two-income households that will likely participate in this program. Let's take an estimated participation percentage of the 600 families. Let's say for easy math and sake of being conservative, we'll go with 25% participation. And we'll go with the number of scholarship applicants. So for 600 family church, we're going to go with 60 scholarship applicants. This could be a little more, could be less, depending on the church and how much interest there is in the families who go there sending their kids to religious school. And let's estimate the average donation. We use $1,500 for this because it's $0 out of pocket. So if you're going to do this, you're probably going to go all the way to $1,700, but there'll be a few people who don't. And then we'll estimate the average CD rate, 30%. Boom. Okay, so as you can see in this example, 600-person church, they were able to take in a total amount of donations of $270,000. Now that's $270,000 per year, every year that this program goes on. And when you add that up to the average scholarship per kid, it adds up to approximately $4,000 in scholarship money per kid. That's approaching the full cost of tuition in some areas, and this doesn't count if you do any type of income preference in how much money the kids get per scholarship. Let's play around with these numbers a little bit just to see how they can affect. So let's increase our participation from 25 to 35%. Take a guess in your head right now of how much you think this average scholarship per kid is going to go up. Wow, $5,670. That's a big increase, just going from 25% to 35% participation. That's a huge number. It's amazing that you can get the price of a brand new house every year just from a 600 family church if you get 35% participation. That's a huge number. Huge number.
There are two main donation methods that donors will likely use when donating to an SGO. Option 1 is the paycheck deduction method. In the paycheck deduction method, the goal is to change the donor's pay stub from looking like the top to looking like the bottom. Now, what are the differences between these two? The first difference is the amount of federal income tax being withheld is reduced by $65.39. $65.39 times 26 for a biweekly pay period equals approximately $1,700. So the federal income tax withholding is reduced by reduced to $119.61, and a new line is added at the bottom for donations to the scholarship granting organization of the donor's choice for the same amount, $65.39. So minus $65.39 up here and plus $65.39 down here. When you do that, if you'll notice, the take-home pay for the donor remains the same in both scenarios. This way, the donor does not have to float any of the donation money. It just automatically comes out of their check, and the amount of money being donated to the scholarship granting organization is the same as the reduction in federal income tax withholding. And they can get away with this reduction in federal income tax withholding because, remember, this is a tax credit. So this $65.39 adds up to the total price of the tax credit that they're planning on getting because they did this donation to the scholarship granting organization.
The second donation method is the lump sum. In this case, the donor writes a check for $1,700 to the SGO of their choice, and then when they file their taxes for the next year, their tax refund check increases by $1,700 in order to reimburse them for their donation to the SGO. This new tax credit creates a large incentive for donors to donate up to $1,700 to SGOs instead of having that money be paid in taxes to the government. These tax credits are non-refundable, meaning that if you don't pay in $1,700 in income taxes over the year, federal income taxes, then you can only donate up to the amount that you paid in. You can't go negative. And all taxpayers are eligible to participate in this tax credit. This will become important later on when we discuss the state-by-state aspect of this law. Part of this new federal tax credit program is that states have the opportunity to opt in or out of the program. What that means is that if a state opts in, then scholarship granting organizations that are qualified to accept these tax credit donations can operate within that state. If a state opts out, scholarship granting organizations that can accept these tax credit donations cannot operate in their state. But the residents of the states that opt out can donate to scholarship granting organizations that operate in states that opt in. So, the example here, if California opts out and Arizona opts in, people in California can donate to SGOs that operate in Arizona and claim the tax credit, but SGOs cannot operate in California. Also, there's some clarification still to come on just exactly what the $1,700 means. It's unclear if a couple filing jointly will be able to donate $1,700 as a couple or $1,700 individually. More clarification will come later on that. Scholarship granting organizations, or SGOs. Ooh, sounds scary. But don't be scared. My church SGO has you covered, and we're here to help you on every step along the way to getting your scholarship granting organization up and rolling so you can receive these tax credit eligible donations. So what exactly is a scholarship granting organization? Well, a scholarship granting organization is a special kind of 501c3 nonprofit corporation. The scholarship granting organization has a special authorization to collect tax reimbursable donations from donors. This is a very important point because of the language of the law. There's very strict what they call no commingling of funds. So it's likely going to be the best bet for churches to start up a new 501c3 nonprofit corporation to handle only these types of donations. That way you can keep that particular 501c3 nonprofit compliant without having to change how you do everything else that you already do with your current 501c3. And then the donations that these SGOs receive go to scholarships to eligible K-12 students, and those scholarship monies have to be used for eligible education expenses. That sounds like a lot, right? Again, don't worry. My church SGO is here to help you stay compliant, track everything correctly, so that you can stay authorized to accept these donations. So what kinds of organizations can charge these SGOs? Well, the answer is pretty much any organization you want. Here's a list that is by no means exhaustive. Another additions to this could be Knights of Columbus, the Moose Lodge, motorcycle clubs, you name it. Any other type of organization could start an SGO in addition to churches. My church SGO is focused exclusively on churches. That's what we do. We're here to help churches figure out how to set up this SGO system so that you can give scholarships to the kids who go to your church or others if you choose to, so that they can attend religious school and hopefully have their faith greatly improved by that. So what types of expenses are eligible for these SGO scholarships to be used for? There are some pretty specific criteria. Fortunately, while they're specific, they're also quite broad. The big ones are tuition and tutoring, room and board and transportation, if that's part of what your school chooses to do. Also computer technology and equipment, that's a big one. And then there's also some excluded things here as well. If you're a real nerd about this and you want to get into the nitty gritty of it, look up these Coverdell accounts. This is a class of education savings account in the federal tax code, and that is what is used to determine whether an expense is qualified or not for the use of these SGO scholarships. So what types of scholarships can be offered by SGOs? Well, the big one here is that per the law that was passed, there are not very many restrictions at all in law as to what types of scholarships can be offered by these SGOs. Now, having said that, there are three main categories that scholarship granting organizations will probably use to determine how much scholarship money to give what kid. Those three categories are need-based, merit-based, and belonging-based. All three of these have their place, and I would encourage, or we would encourage here at My Church SGO that you look at all three options and decide what you think will be the best mix. There are many good faith arguments that can be made for each of these three categories. Student eligibility. Okay, the law actually does have some pretty specific restrictions on which students are eligible for these SGO scholarships. Fortunately, while those laws are very specific, they're also broad. The student who receives a scholarship from these SGOs their family has to earn less than 300% of the average area income. And the average area income is calculated by county in this case. So depending upon the county that the kid who is receiving the scholarship lives in will determine whether or not they meet this 300% threshold or not. They also must be eligible to enroll in a public elementary or secondary school. And this is one that we don't really know a whole lot about here, but the eligible part could be something down the road, but as of right now, it doesn't look like it's going to be a problem. Another thing to consider is that because of this 300% average area income requirement, these SGOs are going to have to hold the parents' tax information, because that's how you verify if the student's family is below the 300% level. Don't worry about it. My church SGO is here to help you out. We have a system for secure data storage of parents' tax returns, because it's a big deal. You don't want those leaking around on the internet. Eligibility criteria for private schools. So, which private schools can accept these SGO scholarships to pay their tuition? The only thing in the law thus far, and there is still more rulemaking to come that may change this, but as of so far, the only rule is that the school must be accredited. This may be a problem for some homeschooling families who send their kids to homeschool co-ops. Those homeschool co-ops are probably going to have to face a choice when it comes to trying to accept SGO scholarships to pay the fees associated with the homeschool co-op. Those co-ops are likely going to either have to get accredited, or they're going to have to not accept SGO scholarship money. So now that we know how this tax credit SGO private school scholarship process works, why should your church start an SGO? It's actually pretty simple and easy. The answer is that kids that go to a religious school are up to 4 times more likely to stay religious as adults than kids who attend public school. It really is that simple. Every single kid that you can get into a private religious school has a much, much better chance of remaining religious throughout their life. And that's supposed to be the mission of all churches. Doesn't matter what denomination you are, what persuasion you are, all churches are supposed to help facilitate souls to heaven. However it is you think that happens. And sending a kid to private school is one of the most powerful things that any church can do to keep that kid religious for the rest of their life. Still not convinced an SGO is right for your church? Give us a little more listen. I think you'll come around our way of thinking. Let's go over the pros of your church starting an SGO. The pros are, as we talked about last slide, kids grow up in a church environment. That's honestly priceless, right? I mean, that's the number one thing. It's just better for the kids. Also, oftentimes, well, not all the time, religious schools can provide a better quality of math and science and writing and reading education than public schools can. Some of this has to do with smaller class size. Some of this has to do with a bunch of other stuff that nobody really knows how it interacts, but they definitely have better test scores and better outcomes in life. Starting an SGO can also entice people to come to your church. We talked about the belonging-based scholarships before. That could be a nice carrot to get some new people coming to your church. And also, it's free money from the government to help you save souls. This really is that simple. Now, what are some of the cons of this, though? Because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Number one con is a lot of setup. And that's where my church SGO is here to help you. We have the system to make it simple, for you and pretty easy for you to set up this SGO complex so that you can help the kids at your church stay faithful to Christ. Another possible, there are some other cons here too. One of the things that might be a problem for your church is a possible debt trap. So if your church looks at this and says, oh man, we not only want to start an SGO, we also want to start a school to take advantage of these SGOs, be wary. We're talking about scholarship funds here, not schools. Schools are a whole other animal. And it may just be better for you to team up with an existing school than to try to build your own. There are some technicalities with SGOs that we haven't talked about yet. As far as an SGO is under law required to have at least 10 scholarship recipients that go to at least 2 different schools. For some small churches, that might be a problem finding those. However, again, My Church SGO is here to help you. So we can help. If you need more scholarship applicants, we can help find those for you. If you need scholarship applicants who are going to go to different schools than most of your kids go to, we can help with that too. And again, the whole thing here is we're trying to make this easy and simple so that more people can take advantage of it. Because the more people who take advantage of it, hopefully, we think that's going to translate into more souls in heaven. And that's a good thing. So how much is this going to cost me? Well, as you can see here, the My Church SGO fee schedule is a progressive schedule. So the more donations you have, the less percentage you'll pay in fees to My Church SGO. If your SGO collects less than $100,000, there's a possibility that there will be some startup fees also. This is to cover the initial cost of getting your SGO compliant. Also, the more donations that you receive, the more free services you will be able to get with My Church SGO, including mass email marketing, mass text marketing, and things of that nature. SGO fee schedule is set up so that the interest earned for 1 year of your total donations at a rate of return of approximately 2.5% to 3% will pay for most, if not all, plus some of the My Church SGO fee. That way, your SGO should still have approximately 10% of all donations to put towards running your SGO. If we take a look at this example of a 1,000 family church, you can see that the total amount of administration budget pre-interest is $90,000. The total amount of administration plus interest for 1 year at 3% is $117,000. After the My Church SGO fee is taken out of the total admin budget, the remaining budget is $92,325. So $2,325 more than just the straight up admin alone. As you can see, at approximately 3%, the interest incurred from the $900,000 in donations, kept at a very modest rate of return of 3%, is more than enough to pay the My Church SGO fee. So, now that we've got to the end, and hopefully we've convinced you that setting up an SGO is the right thing for your church. If you are convinced, here's an overview of how this process is going to work. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to start taking pledges of future donations from your donors. This is key. A pledge is a non-binding checkbox and sign up on mychurchsgo.org for your donors. That way you have their name, their phone number, their email, and an opt-in for mass marketing so that you can keep in touch with them and let them know how things are going. These pledges will also give you an idea of how many or how much scholarship money you can expect, so you can start planning out, okay, do I have enough kids who are going to apply so that I meet my 10 threshold? Are they going to be 2 different schools? All the other things you need to do for planning. The pledges are key. Get the pledges.
Also, if you get a donor to pledge to you first, then when some other organization, 4-H club, Moose Lodge, public school, because they'll probably start these things up, when they come asking for your donor $1,700 or at least part of it, you'll be at top of mind because you got there first, and that is just completely key. Okay, so once you get done start taking your pledges and stuff starts rolling here, first your state has to opt in, which there's no guarantee that it will. But you can still take pledges of donations even if your state doesn't opt in, because just because they don't opt in for 2027 doesn't mean they're not going to change their mind for 2028. And if you already have your donors lined up, ducks in a row, then when your state does opt in, it'll be easy to pull their donations away from the SGO in another state that they were using to your SGO in their home state. After you do that, you want to get your 501, after the pledge thing is all done, or is rolling, not done, because pledges are always ongoing. But after you get your pledges rolling, then you want to create your specific SGO 501c3 nonprofit corporation. This can take a little bit of time because you have to file the paperwork, and then once you get the paperwork back from the state, IRS, there's a bunch of different steps here that can take. We suggest 4 months of planning at least before you get your official designation. It may turn out to be 6 months by the time we get all the different state processes for becoming accredited. But it's going to take a while. So keep that SGO 501c3 in the back of your mind. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, I already have a scholarship fund, why can't I just tack this onto there? No. We do not recommend that here. Reason being the no commingling of funds. So the easiest way to, what's the biblical term for mess up badly? Whatever that is, the easiest way to mess up badly here is to make a paperwork error. In order to minimize the amount of potential paperwork errors, we are highly, highly recommending that people start a dedicated 501c3 just for these SGO tax credit reimbursable donations. After you do that, follow the guidelines, get approved, start soliciting actual donations. So once your state opts in, you can start receiving actual money, actual donations, again, which we can facilitate through mychurchsgo.com. If you go through us to do your donations, we will automatically print out all the forms that you need to stay compliant, and also offer you a yearly compliance audit before you submit your paperwork to make sure that it's right. Those compliance audits will be done by our CPAs, who will be specifically trained in keeping SGOs compliant. After you get your money, right? So now you started receiving money from your donations. Now you got to think about the scholarships. So now you got to tell the kids at your school or at your church, hey, we got these scholarships coming out, and it looks like, based on our pledges, that we're going to be able to give out at least $5,000 a year per kid, and then depending on need, we're going to throw some more on top of that. You got to start advertising that, because otherwise they won't know. And people got to plan school stuff a year in advance, because the kid's going to start a school year here, but then he's not going to want to switch schools until the summertime, and it's better to get this out in front of everybody right away. Another thing that you have to do is set up guidelines for how much scholarship money people get. My Church SGO offers 3 suggestions for setting up how much money each kid gets for your scholarship fund. One is the community model. The community model is where 80% of your scholarship money gets split evenly among all the eligible students who apply, and then 20% is determined by the board of the 501c3 based on whatever you want to base it on. You base it on need, you can make it on family circumstances, a whole bunch of things you can do there, special needs, stuff like that. That's the community model. The average model, which is the mainstay, what we suggest, like, okay, if when in doubt, go with this model, is you say, okay, we have all our money, we split it down the middle 50-50, 50% gets distributed equally to all the eligible students who apply, and 50% gets doled out by the board of the 501c3. The board can have a formula based on income to give kids from poor families more. They can also give more for special needs, more for special family circumstances. And then you can have the charitable model, which is kind of the inversion, where you say, okay, 30% of our all our money is going to be given out equally to all the eligible students who apply, and then 70% is going to be allocated for special needs purposes. This model can be good for a church that really wants to focus on helping the poorest families first before they help everybody else. And that's perfectly fine. There's no legal guidelines or rules you really have to follow as far as scholarship allocation goes. Try to be reasonable. Because if you're not, you're going to find that people are going to pull their donations from your SGO and give them to some other SGO who they think is being more reasonable. And then after you figure out what kids you're going to give scholarships to and how much you're going to give them, then you have to award the scholarships and then monitor those kids, the scholarship money that they receive, for compliance. So that's another place my church SGO can help you is, did the kids spend the scholarship money they got on expenses that they were actually allowed to do? My church SGO is going to have a student portal where the students will be able to log all of their expenses that they spent this money on. That way, if you ever get audited or you have any questions there, you can just pull up their student page and say, oh, look, here's a receipt for, we gave this student $5,000. Here's a receipt from St. Stan's Church School, and tuition for the year was $5,500, and they used all $5,000 of that scholarship money to cover St. Stan's tuition. Okay, political map. We already kind of talked about this a little bit. Won't spend too much time on it. Basically, the first step that has to happen before you can actually receive money is that your state has to opt in. A lot of projection here. There so far, and this is October of 2025, so far we've had mixed results as far as trying to predict whether or not your state is going to opt in the near future. North Carolina, which is kind of a purple state with a Democrat governor, has said, yes, we're going to opt in. Wisconsin, which is kind of a purple state with a Democrat governor, said, no, we're not going to opt in. The first state to officially opt in was the state of Nebraska, because kind of figures. So we're not really sure on which states are going to opt in or not. But I will say every year is a new opportunity. And a lot of the political analysis on this suggests that when residents of a state that opts out start seeing their money going to another state instead of their state, it tends to erode the political differences that are often define whether a state opts in or out. Okay, so in conclusion, setting up the system to take advantage of this new federal scholarship tax credit, everything from the donors to the SGOs to the scholarships to the compliance to keep this going year after year, is an enormous opportunity for churches to help kids find the narrow way. And because this program is open to every taxpayer who pays in federal taxes, the room for growth here is absolutely immense. The best numbers that are available indicate that there are over 100 million potential donors in the United States. And because of that large number of potential donors, this can be very financially rewarding for churches to do. Thank you for your time, and we'll hope to see you in the future soon when My Church SGO is helping you get your SGO system up and running so that you can help kids make it to heaven. Thank you.